Over the weekend, there was a lawsuit filed by Eric Sanders, once again, with a lieutenant that could unequivocally prove there is an extortion racket that went on. So let me read this off to you and to the audience. And this is the best article because it comes straight from a press release from the Eric Sanders, the lawyer. Veteran NYPD lieutenant files EEOC charge alleging racial discrimination, retaliation, and corruption within the department. February 13, 2025, Lieutenant Emilio C. Rodriguez, a decorated officer with over 2 decades of service in the New York City Police Department, has filed a charge of discrimination with the United States Equal Opportunity Commission, EEOC, against the City of New York NYPD Legal Bureau. The charge filed on the EEOC charge number 520-2025-03104 alleges that the NYPD engaged in racial discrimination, subjected him to hostile work environment, and retaliated against him for exposing corruption and misconduct within the department. Rodriguez asserts that he became the target of a systematic retaliation after refusing to comply with selective enforcement practices that shielded certain nightlife establishments from legal scrutiny due to their connections with high-ranking NYPD officials. He further contends that his refusal to participate in these corrupt practices resulted in an ongoing campaign of intimidation, professional sabotage, and efforts to destroy his career. According to the charge, Rodriguez witnessed a coordinated effort by senior officials, including Commanding Officer NYPD Castillo, Executive Officer Erickson Peralta, Special Operations Lieutenant Michael J. DeSanto, and former Administrative Lieutenant Jonathan Cruz within the 34th Precinct, which covers Washington Heights, to selectively enforce or ignore laws based on personal relationships and undisclosed financial interests. He specifically alleges that James Caban, the twin brother of former Police Commissioner Edward A. Caban, maintained an undisclosed relationship with Castillo. This resulted in regular phone calls and in-person meetings where selective enforcement decisions were made. These discussions allegedly determined which businesses and individuals within the Washington Heights area were subject to police action and which were shielded from enforcement. As a result, certain nightclubs and lounges with ties to the former commissioner's family were deliberately exempted from law enforcement oversight, regardless of the volume of the complaints or criminal activities reported at those locations. Rodriguez claims that the officers were explicitly ordered to disregard violations and close out 311 complaints about these establishments without taking action, despite numerous reports involving crimes such as noise violations, illegal activities, and disturbances. Castillo and DeSanto directed officers to refrain from enforcement efforts and suppress any police response. Rodriguez, responsible for overseeing operations, questions these unlawful practices, which he believes led to immediate retaliation against them. The charge details a pattern of financial misconduct within the department, including manipulating overtime assignments for personal gain. Rodriguez states that Castillo ensured that Lieutenant DeSanto and Officer Vincent G. Bracco were granted no less than 40 hours of overtime per month despite not performing legitimate law enforcement duties. Overtime codes intended for specific events, including Israeli protests, were misused to funnel taxpayer money into the paychecks of favored officers. DeSanto received a discretionary promotion to Lieutenant Special Assignment in exchange for their loyalty, while Castillo was overlooked despite expecting his promotion. Rodriguez contends that his refusal to participate in these fraudulent practices led to further targeting by Castillo and his associates. The charge also alleges that Rodriguez endured a hostile work environment where Castillo and DeSanto openly referred to themselves as the mafia and warned him that if one of them had a problem with him, the entire family did. The workplace hostility escalated after Rodriguez went on a medical leave due to a cardiac condition. During this time, Castillo called him repeatedly, accusing him of playing sick and demanded that he work from home despite his medical restrictions. On several occasions, Castillo launched profanity-laced tirades over the phone, which were overheard by Rodriguez's 10-year-old child, causing lasting emotional distress. When Rodriguez resisted these demands, Castillo took further retaliatory action by making false allegations about his mental health, which resulted in the unjust removal of his firearm and his placement on restricted duty. Rodriguez's EEOC filing details how Castillo and his associates deliberately undermined his career by blocking his overtime, reassigning him to the midnight shift, and falsely reporting him as insubordinate to superior officers. Castillo allegedly contacted Rodriguez's new command and instructed them not to extend them any professional courtesies, ensuring his reputation was tarnished. His opportunities for advancement within the NYPD were severely limited. In addition to the financial misconduct and retaliation, the charge outlines allegations of sexual misconduct within the department, specifically involving Lieutenant DeSanto and former domestic violence Sergeant Christina Ortiz. Rodriguez states that DeSanto and Ortiz engaged in an inappropriate sexual relationship within 34th precinct offices, including the domestic violence office and the commanding officer's office, with clear evidence left behind, such as broken nails found in offices where these encounters occurred. Rodriguez contends that Castillo was fully aware of this misconduct but chose to ignore it, further reinforcing the department's corruption culture. Despite meeting all qualifications necessary for reinstatement of full duty, Rodriguez remains unjustly restricted with no explanation. The charge states that his prolonged restriction is a direct act of retaliation designed to diminish his career and silence his ongoing concerns regarding NYPD misconduct. The refusal to reinstate him to full duty has negatively impacted his ability to earn overtime, pursue promotions, and perform his responsibilities as a law enforcement officer. Through his EOC charge, Rodriguez seeks multiple remedies, including full reinstatement to duty, removal of all retaliatory employment actions from his record, compensatory damages for lost wages and emotional distress, and an independent federal investigation into NYPD's systematic corruption and selective enforcement practice. His attorney, Eric Sanders, Esquire, stated, Lieutenant Rodriguez has dedicated over 2 decades to protecting and serving the people of New York, only to be repaid with retaliation, racial discrimination, and workplace harassment for doing the right thing. His case is a glaring example of the corruption within the NYPD's upper ranks. No officer should be punished for refusing to engage in selective enforcement, payroll fraud, and cover-ups. We are calling for a full federal investigation into the practice of the NYPD and those responsible for Lieutenant Rodriguez's mistreatment. The EEOC has officially acknowledged receipt of the charge and notified the City of New York NYPD Legal Bureau. Under federal guidelines, the NYPD has 10 days to respond. The case may also be referred to state and local employment practice agencies, FEPAs, for concurrent investigation. Now, Serena, I have now learned in the last few days, the community in Washington Heights is calling media, elected officials. They're saying that all their complaints they could prove have not been answered. They basically what we call shit canning them. And what happened is they actually heard me on the Sid Rosenberg reference this case. It riled them up. They also called Eric Sanders. There is a lot of commotion in that precinct. So I don't know what you could say about this. This is disgusting. And again, who was in charge? Who was their friend? Who was involved in this nightclub extortion racket thing? Mayor Eric Adams and Eddie Caban standing right next to him. What are your thoughts?
Yep. My thoughts are the same as they were before, which is everything that Eric Adams touches goes to hell. Because, this is what is, first of all, the allegations in this filing track, right? We have heard over the last 3 years so many iterations of these very same things, between the sexual misconduct, the overtime abuse, the retribution against any sort of whistleblowers, all of it, literally all of it tracks. And they obviously spared no one, right? They didn't learn, certainly, from their errors from the beginning of Eric Adams's, ascent into mayorship. They haven't learned anything. They continue to do the things that they do, and they continue to run it like a bully gang. And these are the fallouts, and we all have to pay for it. All of us New York City dwellers have to pay for all of these lawsuits to get settled. And now Eric Sanders is going to have a line of witnesses to use in his case, on behalf of these people, because they are all going to be consistent in their stories. They're all going to give their personal experiences. And look, if they don't really know each other very well, I mean, I'm sure some of the people within the community know each other, but as a former police officer, if people keep coming in with the same story and they don't know each other well, or they haven't collaborated or colluded, and yet their stories match, that's going to be a pretty bad look. I think the city is going to look, I don't even know anymore. I really don't. But if I were the city, I would quietly settle this case because it sounds like they have, if it goes through the discovery process, it's going to uncover a hell of a lot of corruption and a lot more trouble for Eric Adams and Caban and everybody else in the gang.
And again, all roads lead back to Cosa Frito, where everything and anything was happening. Once again, just to throw that in there, I'm being proven correct. What people like to say, you have an axe to grind. Why is this crew constantly committing the same acts? And it doesn't matter whether it's Cosa Frito, the 3-4 precinct, Zona de Cuba, the One Police Plaza, this other place in Coney. It's the same crew doing the same things all the time, party all the time. Now, because that other place with that other gaffe with Raul Stevenson having a party where they were judging who had the best female. That was another.
The place in New Rochelle.
Yeah, it's just the same repeated pattern of abuse here by this police department and Eric Adams' administration, which is why President Trump should really reconsider what they're doing because, of course, the allegations and everything that happens goes back to Eric Adams. That's why the Public Corruption Unit had 200 cases. Right now, there are only 3 attorneys left in this unit, and they have no access to any of the computers. You just watched the latest clip from the Sal Greco show. If you want to watch the full episode, click the link below. And while you're at it, please hit the like, share, subscribe button. And don't forget to click the notification button also.